Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome everybody to the January 13th, 2022, our first meeting of the year. And I wish to welcome you and give you a happy new year greeting. Hope everybody enjoyed the time off, holidays, and all those good things. So here we are back at work. So let's start off with the roll call, please.
Okay. Committee member Zarate. Committee member Silver.
Here.
Committee member Pratt. Committee member Labrie.
Present.
Committee member Newkirk.
Here.
Vice Chair France. And Chair Pinner.
Chair is present. Thank you.
I seem to be having a problem. I don't hear everybody. I've just heard a couple people.
Okay, well, maybe just a volume adjustment, and everyone, if you could, please try to make sure your mics are close and clear. We'll move on to item number 3, which is changes to the agenda. And if I'm correct, we are going to switch items number 8 and 9 and move economic recovery ordinance up without objection. Okay. At this time, we will move to public comment. This is the time for the public who wishes to comment on anything before the jurisdiction of this committee that is not currently on today's agenda. And if you look on the screen, you can see how you can make public comment.
Okay, Mr. Chair, and for members of the public who may be present, we're in the Zoom platform now, so you're just going to use that raise hand button that should be at the bottom of your screen in order to indicate that you'd like to speak, and then we'll allow you to unmute yourself and call on you. I don't see any hands raised for public comment right now.
Very well, thank you very much. We will close public comment. All right, we'll move on to item number 5 on our agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from our meeting now 2 months ago of November 11th, 2021. Hopefully you all were able to remember that, and I'll seek a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I would make the motion to approve the minutes as submitted. I didn't see any corrections or have any comments, so.
Thank you. I have a motion from Mr. Labrie. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I think that was a second from Mr. Newkirk. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote, please.
Okay. Committee member Silver.
Yes.
Committee member Labrie. Oh,
Yes.
Okay. Chair Pinner.
Yes.
And then committee member Newkirk.
Yes.
All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move to item number 6, which is announcements. Before I give it to you, Sarah, for announcements, I just want to say thank you to all the city staff that are on the call today. I've seen a number of folks joining us here for the call and really appreciate your being with us and presenting and sharing with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Pinner. So we move the announcements up to the beginning today because we've got some staffing changes to announce. So as you may have already noticed, Matt Four is not with us today. He is no longer with the city of Santa Barbara. We wish him well as he's moved on to a new opportunity with the city of Goleta. But effective yesterday, we have Jessica Grant stepping into that interim manager position. So Jessica is here this morning. Jessica, if you want to give yourself a little introduction.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Clark. As Sarah just mentioned, as of yesterday, I've been appointed as the interim Public Works Downtown Manager, overseeing the transportation planning and Parking Division. For the past few years, I have been leading the Transportation Planning Division. I've had a couple decade career at the city of Santa Barbara. And for those of you, I'm a familiar face, and I have interfaced with this board quite a bit in the past with a lot of downtown parking capital projects. But I'm happy to return and to work with this wonderful committee. So today, just as the recent appointment, I will be getting up to speed. So I am here primarily to listen, but I am honored to take the interim position, and I look forward to working with you all.
Well, thank you, Ms. Grant. You are a familiar face to us, so we feel comfortable and in good hands, and we are pleased that you are here to join us. We did see a little smile on Mr. Newkirk's face when the announcement about Mr. Ford going to Goleta. So I think he's suggesting there's a feather in the cap there for Goleta. So we do wish Mr. Ford good wishes, and he's been a great service to our city and our community and our residents, and we're going to miss him. But he's not too far away, so hopefully the good things he does for the city of Goleta spill over into our neighborhoods too. So welcome, Ms. Grant. We look forward to working with you. So thank you.
So yes, we're very excited to have Jessica joining us. A few other personnel announcements. First off, I actually have been officially appointed into the acting downtown plaza and parking manager position. This is a position that was vacated by Victor Garza about a year ago. So that also happened, that happened in December. And then finally, we have the new mayor and city council were sworn in this past Tuesday. And along with that, they appointed new council liaisons. So just to let the committee know, our liaison has changed for this go around. So Councilmember Mike Jordan will be stepping in as our liaison. Previously, he was our alternate, and Councilmember Harmon will be taking that alternate role. I believe that Councilmember Jordan has joined us this morning, and our new mayor, Randy Rouse, is also joining us today.
Well, great. That is good news, Ms. Clark, about your appointment to the plaza manager. We know that's a very challenging job, and comes with a lot of public outreach. So we know you're up to the task, and congratulations to you. And yes, welcome to our new mayor joining us today. Thank you for that. Congratulations. And I was just concerned, Mr. Mayor, are you familiar with the Downtown Parking Committee?
You know, I've heard of it. I read about it in the paper a couple of times. I certainly know who you are, but yeah, I've got a couple of years back there with the Downtown Parking Committee. So, and I do know that we have some brand new issues that are a little bit different than back they were in the old days. So that's why I'm pretty interested in what you guys are up to.
Well, thank you, Mayor Rouse. To be clear for everyone who may not know, Mr. Rouse, I think, cut his political teeth, his governance teeth on downtown parking. So
yeah, we don't use the P word. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I changed my term after what you said, and we welcome you back to the role of involvement with our committee. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And to Councilmember Jordan, we welcome you, and I look forward to you being our liaison and helping us through many difficult decisions and ideas and thoughts and process as we go through a lot of changes here in downtown. So
happy to be here.
Councilman.
Randy always told me there was donuts though, and I walked out in the kitchen and there weren't any donuts here at home. So I'm kind of disappointed. So
right now it's a self-serve process.
Yeah, but happy to be here and happy to see some of you. I haven't seen some of you in person for frickin' a year and a half or 2 years, and great to see some of you. Matt Labrie in particular. Yep.
Well, great announcements, Ms. Clark. Are there any other announcements?
No other announcements this morning.
All right. Well, again, welcome to all. We enjoy your involvement, input, feedback, and comments. It's very important to us to help us make good decisions and recommendations for our downtown parking and plaza operations. All right. Well, we'll turn it over to our first item or report today, item 7, the De La Guerra Plaza report. And Ms. Clark, take it away.
Thank you, Chair Pinner. So this morning we have Brad Hess with us. He is our special projects engineer for here in Public Works, and he's going to give the committee an update on the status of the De La Guerra Plaza project, the De La Guerra Plaza revitalization project. So I'll let Mr. Hess step on in.
Thank you, Ms. Clark, and I realized all right, there we go. Can you guys see the screen okay? And can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. Thank you, Chair Pinner, and thank you, Ms. Clark, for the introduction. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's been a little while since I have presented to you all. So thanks for this opportunity. A lot has happened. So I brought a lot of slides with me today, and so I'm going to jump right in. There will be time for questions, of course, at the end, but jumping right in. This project started about 3 years ago, hard to believe, but I'm going to be working left to right just to draw some highlights for you. The advisory committee that was formed in 2019 has met 12 times. We've had formal and a lot of informal outreach to the community over these last 3 years. We've done several technical studies on the plaza. We've been to council. We've been to committees. We've been to HLC twice, one of which was actually a 4-hour work session in combination with the advisory committee. And we're actually going to HLC next Wednesday, the 19th, for a third concept review. So currently the project is still in concept. We have not done any formal application like a PRT yet, but we're hoping that that's forthcoming. So in October, we did an online public outreach. It was a questionnaire that was done, and really it was about trying to just, again, confirm that we're on the right track. With all of the changes to State Street and with the downtown area due to COVID, we asked questions about the plaza, about the project itself, why are people coming downtown, what they prefer to do downtown, where they live, and just about some features in the project. And without going through all of these are the summary and the salient points from that questionnaire. Give me a second to read them. We had some visuals as part of this. On the lower left, you can see the arcade that is being proposed, and I'll get more into that in a little bit. In the upper right, you'll see an interactive water feature that is as part of the plan. And we're also, in the bottom right, we're going to be transforming the front of City Hall, which is the Anacapa side, believe it or not, into a demonstration and model landscape for sustainability. As part of the community input and results, we had about 532, we actually had exactly 532 people respond, which we felt really good about. It's a lot of people engaging in the process. And we had, as part of that, a free response question at the end, which was basically, what else would you like to share with us? And of the total number, we had 342 people respond, which was great, again. And out of those 342 responses, we counted out 501 topical comments. And we wanted to articulate those just visually so that people could see that, you know, there are a lot of ranging questions, comments, concerns, everything from the far right, which is make sure you have dog accommodations, all the way up to, which was the biggest concern, which was, look, if you don't resolve the homeless issue in that area, you're just going to be creating a nicer space with the same problems. So I'd be happy to go into each of those, but just wanted to give you that summary. So the key takeaways for us were we're on the right track. People felt that this was an important project and significant for the area. We need to continue to refine the plans, and that the concerns that were raised and noted have been noted, and we're going to do all that we can to mitigate those issues through design. So we've also done a traffic and parking study. Associated Transportation Engineers, ATE, you guys are very familiar with them. We did a study back in 2019, and which felt like a different world back then. But 2021 obviously was, with the opening up, it was sort of a new normal, and we wanted to update that traffic and parking study. And in 2019, well, actually the study in 2021 focused on volume and the types of vehicular use came through, the destinations of where people were going once they parked, and then overall, what's the parking in the area. So looking at the volume, we have about 2,000 cars right now going through De La Guerra Plaza area, and about 30 delivery trucks on average. From about 40 to 60% of the vehicles that enter the plaza do not find parking and turn around and exit. And as you can see, since the closure of State Street, the traffic volume has substantially reduced. Sorry about the crude quality of this slide, but it was pulled from ATE's report. Just wanted to point out that on weekdays, about 70% of people that go there are going to State Street. And on weekends, about 87% of those people are going to State Street. And then the last thing we looked at is the data for the parking in the area, parking structures primarily. We looked at, we pulled the data from lots 2, 9, and 10. 2 is just above Paseo Nuevo, 9 is the Libero parking structure, and 10 is the Ortega lot, just to orient you. I'm sure you know that, but just to make sure. And really, as you can see, it's changed since 2019. So there's additional capacity right now, which this is a snapshot of the time, obviously, so we can't predict the future, but you can see that there's a substantial difference in the capacity from just 2 years ago. So here's our summary from that traffic and parking. Most people are headed to State Street. The city lots 2, 9, and 10 do have ample capacity to absorb the loss of 60 spaces from the plaza. It's not going to be 60, it's actually going to be 52. The delivery vehicles right now are using De La Guerra Plaza and State Street, that intersection, as their spot to deliver and pick up in the morning and actually throughout the day. And that's a pretty impacted space. It makes sense. It's the shortest distance between the two spaces, where they are and where they need to go. So it's a natural spot. And we're working with the Transportation Division to try and figure out how to accommodate that as the plaza changes. And then lastly, we still need short-term parking, not only for City Hall, but for the surrounding businesses. So here's our blown up site plan. It doesn't include State Street or Anacapa. So let me orient you. State Street is running along the bottom where it says Downtown Parking Committee. It's basically along that line. And Anacapa Street runs parallel to that at the top, which you obviously can't see. But just to let you know, again, the design is that it's pedestrian only. We will have retractable bollards on both the State Street side as well as the Anacapa side. The circles that you see are new trees and tree wells that have seating and landscaping. They're approximately 8 to 10 feet in diameter, if that gives you some reference point. There's going to be much improved lighting from what is there, and public Wi-Fi is planned. And let me just point out, if you can see my cursor, I'm circling the area where the adobe is. It's in the upper right-hand corner, up near the Harmer adobe wall. The interactive water feature is right in the middle. If you can still see, sorry, my cursor is not that great, but right on the corner at Stork Placita, right here, we're going to have public restrooms. We're going to have underground trash enclosures with above ground receptacles, and I'll explain that in a little bit. And then again, the features of the surface materials that you'll see, you can just see different patterns right now. That has not been decided, but I'll get into some of those details in a minute too. So here's a rendering of the arcade looking north. You can see City Hall on the left in the background. The idea is that we're going to have a raised stage in the middle. That's just a natural stage for small venue performances, people to sit and enjoy the space. That will also be the reoriented Fiesta location for this larger stage that will come straight out from that. It won't use that stage per se. It will be a larger stage that's put in. So this is an elevation that just gives you some reference point to how big it is, the separation from City Hall, and the general look and feel. The two panels on the far left and the far right, you can see are solid. These will be good opportunities for art, for cultural representation, perhaps. It's also strategic. The one on the left will be hiding the new 800 amp panel from Edison that will be relocated from the circus tent in the middle of the plaza where it is currently. I referenced the public restrooms, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner. Just to let you know, we had a possible arrangement with the owners of 726 State Street, which is the Supercuts building, and the Ironworks space, which is here in the back. That unfortunately did not happen. Can't go into the details, but it just proved impossible. We were going to potentially do a land swap or potentially even buy that space, and it just proved impossible. But these are three sketches that give you sort of a massing and architectural feel for what we're planning. It's a combination of a pump room for the interactive water feature, as well as the restrooms that will be self-cleaning restrooms. The underground trash enclosure. Now these are the above ground receptacles that you see on the right are located in Europe. And you can see the outline of the underground enclosure that gets raised up on a hydraulic platform. That's our design. I just wanted to point out that the EPV standard on the left obviously is not rectangular. So we're going to be working with a manufacturer to fabricate one that meets EPV standards, hides the receptacles. But the idea here is that you're going to have a receptacle that is available to all the businesses. It's actually going to be two locations, one on De La Guerra Street and one in Stork Placita, for the businesses in the area to use this for trash recycling and food scraps, where you have a card reader. They come up, they have permission to use it. It unlocks, they put their trash recycling or food scraps in the appropriate container, and it drops down a chute into a larger bin, whether it's 3 yard or 4 yard. And then when it needs to be emptied, the whole hydraulic lift comes up, the bin is removed, and Marburg takes it away. And the lift goes back down, concealing the majority of the trash. So great space saver, much better in terms of aesthetics. It meets all of the ADA standards, makes it very easy. Generally speaking, it's about the same cost. So this will be new to the city, and I've been working with our environmental group as well as Marburg, and it's coming along nicely. The company that we're working out of nationally is Van Dyke. They are located on the East Coast, and they are they have affiliates internationally to make this happen. So let me talk really quickly about the surface materials. There are functional and practical considerations that we obviously have to consider. It's a huge deal. Aesthetically, it has to meet EPV guidelines and Historic Landmarks Commission requirements, but it also has to look good. Now, right now, it doesn't look good. And the reason it doesn't look good is because over the years, things happen. Utilities break, things need to be torn up, and unfortunately, we have 10 different shades of concrete as a result. So the goal is to provide a surface material over utilities that can be brought up and put down and look exactly the same as when they left it. Additionally, you're going to have occasional heavy traffic. Maintenance, again, regarding the utilities or cleaning. We just need to have it durable. And then all of this, of course, is cost related. And what they didn't have and what they don't have in any of the international famous plazas is ADA compliance. So it's a tall order. We'll be working with HLC to come up with the palette of options that will make this happen. These are some visuals of what we're looking at. can see the field paving up above with the large stone, which it would be lovely if we can make that happen. The left side, we might be dealing with a 5-point style that's mortared. We're going to need to use brick for those areas over the utilities. And all this has to run through the filter of cost, of course. So that is me in a nutshell. Thank you for your time.
All
I
right.
hope it was fast enough.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hess, for that presentation. Very much appreciate it. Maybe if possible, to either, if we put a slide up, either show a picture of the plaza, might be helpful. I guess that works for us. Well, thank you. All right, I'm gonna start off with just a few comments and questions and then open it up to the committee. I think I want to bring or make sure everyone on the committee and the public listening, as you showed the two different capacities of the lot from 2019 and 2021, excuse me, in that significant reduction. We have a lot of experience with that, and that's definitely COVID. And that's something we've experienced in all our lots. So I think in your planning models, I would encourage you to be using the 2019 numbers, not the 2021 numbers. I don't think those are indicative of where we think parking's going. I do believe, though, it looked as if there was still enough capacity, even under the 2019 numbers, to handle, as you said, the 52 additional parking. So I just want to, I think from our standpoint, make sure you're keenly aware that 2021 would not be a good year to use for planning purposes. And then one other question I had, in the traffic study, you referred to the term a vehicle comes through the plaza and either doesn't find a parking or something. So do you mean go through the plaza means actually turns into the U-shaped area? That's not just driving on De La Guerra.
Correct. It has to be either they have turned into the horseshoe pattern and they've done a 3-point turn on De La Guerra Street and turned around, or they've driven all the way through toward the News Press and back out. Okay,
so I was just confirming that go through means you actually entered the U-shaped driveway per se. All right, those are my just two comments. I might have a few other thoughts as we go through here. Does anyone else of the committee want to comment or have a question? Just raise your hand or turn on your mic.
This is Barbara.
Barbara, go ahead.
My comment is to keep track of the accessible parking, the handicap parking spaces that you are losing as a separate statistic. And my other question is, some of those spaces by the news press, are those news press, does the news press control those spaces, or do they have other spaces, or how does that work for traffic for them, or are they not getting walk-in traffic anymore?
Thank you, Ms. Silver. Those are great comments. Let me address both of them. The ADA spaces, we have one, what I didn't show, and I apologize, given the committee, is on the north side of where Anacapa Street and De La Guerra Street meet. We're going to have 8 spaces there, one of which is an ADA space. But part of this will also be allowing the public, and we need to work out the details, but allowing the public to use the 3 ADA spaces in the City Hall parking lot, which for the most part are not used. So we'll have a path of travel from those spaces into the revitalized plaza space and for the area. So we'll actually be increasing from the 1 ADA space we have now in the plaza to utilizing 4. With respect to, yes, do you want?
Yes, my other question was about the 15-minute spaces where the curve is painted green. What will happen to those? Because they also get used for handicap parking.
Correct. So the 6 spaces that we'll have at the Anacapa side of De La Guerra Street will all be short-term. So those 15, we think it'll be 15-minute spaces, will be for City Hall and the surrounding businesses. With respect to the news press spaces, those are not controlled by the news press. If they, the position that the advisory committee has taken is that if the news press feels like they need additional 15-minute zones, they have plenty of space in their own parking lot that they can provide those spaces, which is basically the same distance from where the city's 15-minute zones are.
Oh, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Ms. Silva. Mr. Labrie.
Yeah, Brad, thank you so much for the update. It's really nice to kind of get back in touch with where things are at. My question is, some of the most important issues to me in terms of circulation and parking and trash are still kind of in the early stages. What do you expect for schedule, and when would we see this again? And what does your kind of refinement process look like?
Thank you, Mr. Labrie. It's really a challenge actually to figure out what the timing of the process will be. We're going to be going to HLC next week. Our hope, honestly, is to have them affirm what we're doing to the degree that we can do a PRT submittal and get into community development. If next week's meeting with HLC, because they are our governing body in this project, if they feel like we need a lot more tweaking, we may need to go back to them one more time or two more times before we go to PRT. So that's the initial process, getting into community development and really starting this formally. We have a couple long-term and long-range issues that need to be resolved. One of them is archaeology. We've done a phase 1 and a phase 2. We have to do a phase 3 for this project, which I don't know if any of you have done them. I'm vaguely familiar with them, but I do know that they take a very long time. And the phase 3 will be based on depths of excavation and an approved plan. And then they will go out and do their phase 3. So that will take a while. How much time, I'm not sure, but I'm projecting out it's probably going to be in the 18 months to 2 years before this breaks ground. And I'm expecting a 6 to 9 month construction plan, depending on how we can do the phasing. With respect to refining the design, it's ongoing. Obviously, HLC is going to have a lot to say. Surface materials, landscape palette, art and cultural representation, lighting, but pertaining to circulation and the issues that matter to you guys with respect to trash and circulation, we've been working with transportation. We had a formal review of this plan already. That will continue as the plan changes. To address the trash, we're working with the downtown, the State Street Master Plan committee, as well as Tess Harris and Jason to make sure that our goals align. We're gonna need a schedule and an ability to empty those trash containers and those trash bins. So how that will work is being figured out, not only with Marburg, but how State Street will work. So all of these details are just constantly getting moved forward and refined as the process and as the design continues. So I hope that answers your question. It's probably a vague answer because it's a vague future.
Yeah, I think my question really was some of the most important functionality issues have not been resolved, and yet another trip to HLC can lock in aesthetic things that limit your functionality potentially. And so I'm wanting to see how deliveries and trash pickup and those types of problems are solved. The parking question, I have a pretty good sense of. And so, HLC approving a type of trash receptacle as opposed to the type and locations makes me feel better if that's the case, but, you know, locking in the design relative to, that would might limit, you know, good solutions for pickup and deliveries and that kind of thing is really the heart of my question. And I know RRM and your team, I'm sure, are thinking about that, but that's really the heart of my comment.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Newkirk, I'm going to go to you 1 second. I know Mr. Hess, unfortunately, it's not in this slide, but I know in presentations I've watched in the past, you were referring to that parking on the what would be called De La Guerra, just west of Anacapa, and we don't see it here. So it's hard for us to comment on those spots. I don't think you have a slide that shows that. Am I correct?
I don't, but I'm going to find one right now as we're talking.
Okay,
So
that would be great to pull that up. And I just want to remind the committee, it's 8:09. I want to make sure by around 8:20 we get to the next item because Mr. Harris has to leave at 8:30. All right, Mr. Newkirk, please.
Thanks, Chair Penner. Mr. Hess, I just want to make sure I understand the process, right? So HLC is the final approval body for this project, is that right?
yes, Mr. Newkirk, that's correct.
So will this go to city council ever?
It will not for any approvals. It will go most likely for an update, but not because we have to.
All right, so I'll just make a comment. I know this, it's my understanding that the HLC authority is in the charter, but to me, for a city project of this magnitude, it seems wild to me that the HLC, which has a singular focus on historic preservation and design, is the approval body. There's so many more factors at play here. And even commenting on design, this is going to get reworked by HLC. We've seen what HLC did just to the solar panels on the Granada garage and how many times that had to go. I'm not even sure if that's gotten approval yet. So I guess I'm just going to leave that comment and move on.
If I could, Mr. Newkirk, let me just address that. Part of our advisory committees, we had 2 members of HLC on our advisory committee. So it won't be a foreign idea and concept coming to them. So that does help.
Thank you, Mr. Newkirk and Mr. Hess. Anyone else of the committee before I go to public comment wishing to speak? Okay, why not at this moment, Sarah, let's just open up public comment.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not see any hands raised for public comment.
All right, thank you. We'll close public comment. Mr. Hess, were you able to track down that slide I'm referring to?
That's what I'm trying to share with you. And I keep grabbing the wrong one.
I'm sorry to do that. I know I watched a presentation and I was keenly focused on that topic. I think what shows it there, you've got it. That concept plan does show the parking there. So
okay. Yes, I thought I was on the other. So it's right here.
so maybe you can
Very
just,
much. Thank
if you can briefly explain to our committee, because this is a significant change to the traffic pattern and flow. And if I understand correctly, someone turning on Anacapa, that'll be basically a dead end at the word where we see the word street. And they're come in and park. So if I'm not explaining that correctly, please maybe let the committee know otherwise.
You are correct. I've been working with Derek Bailey on this entire intersection, actually. So that will be changed. The signals will be changed out. The lane change coming from Santa Barbara Street down De La Guerra Street as you approach Anacapa and you're facing State Street. That left lane change will stay, but the going straight lane will change and we'll have some additional parking there. This whole section, this is actually an old plan, so my apologies, but it's the plaza will actually start out at the edge. So for pedestrian continuity going down Anacapa Street, you'll have a continuous sidewalk. And the edge of the plaza itself you'll be driving up into the level surface, because all of this will be one level surface, which will be the height of the curve.
Right.
So you would come in, you'd park in perpendicular fashion. This is the ADA space, and this has been changed to a larger commercial loading space.
I think for the committee's sake, and I have great trust in Bailey's traffic wisdom, and so we're probably opining on some of the same things, but obviously our concern from a parking and operation as a vehicle coming down Anacapa, not being able to tell whether there's a space down at the end, decides to turn in, oh, there's no space. And then that movement of, turning around, or a delivery truck turning in there and going, well, now I've got to back out onto Anacapa. I'm sure you guys have handled it. I just think for our committee, we probably have the same concern. But I greatly appreciate the goal here is to provide accessible, quick parking to City Hall. So we understand the goal and we want to help attain that goal. And I guess we're expressing the concern. So that's my comment on that. I don't have a solve yet. So just got a couple more minutes. Are there any other comments from the committee regarding this concern? All right. I don't see anybody else yet. So thank you. I think to Mr. Labree's comment, Mr. Hess, if you feel there's an opportunity to get further input as things change, we would greatly appreciate that. I do follow Mr. Newkirk's comment on surprise on where that final decision lies. At the end of the day, groups like DPC are going to be dealing with the operational things. So that's why we feel we need to keep involved and have our pulse on what's happening. And that meeting for HLC is next week.
Correct. It's next Wednesday.
Okay. So if possible, myself or someone else from this committee might be able to attend and have input at that time. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hess. With that, we will close the item on our agenda. And we will move, as we did, we reorganized the agenda to move item 9 up before item 8, which is the Economic Recovery Ordinance Update, which I think Mr. Harris is going to be providing us a presentation.
Good morning, Chair, members of the Downtown Parking Committee. My name is Jason Harris. I'm the city's Economic Development Manager. And joining me this morning is Tess Harris, the city's State Street Master Planner. She'll actually be giving the presentation today. I'm just going to provide some opening remarks and reference points. So as we all may recall, the city enacted an emergency economic recovery ordinance in May of 2020. That was in response to the public health orders that had closed all indoor business activities in the spring of 2020. If we recall back to the early days of the pandemic, only essential businesses were able to operate. Food service businesses could only have takeout and delivery. Retail was completely closed. So in response, the city adopted this emergency economic recovery ordinance that allowed businesses to expand and operate outdoors. Obviously, it facilitated the closure of streets, particularly State Street, and the creation of the State Street Promenade. That initial emergency ordinance was only in place for 4 months. Initially, we thought the early days of the pandemic and public health orders were relatively short term. So we extended that. So September of 2020 came and went. We extended that till March of 2021. That date came and went and extended a second time for a full year, which we're now approaching. And that emergency ordinance is now expiring. As we know, we're still in the throes of the pandemic. However, we do not have the public health orders restricting business activity as we did prior. Businesses are able to fully operate indoors at this point. However, we still understand the need for recovery. Obviously, still have a need for the closure of State Street, but we also have pressing needs for emergency access and overall city circulation. So with those opening remarks, and maybe just lastly, we are now positioning for that January 25th council discussion, which we'll be having two conversations on the 25th, first at Ordinance Committee, and then later that afternoon at the full council. So two opportunities of public comment and review to the proposed ordinance. Business outreach, we have distributed, hand distributed notices to the affected businesses. So I'll take one step back, and this is kind of setting the table for Tess's overall presentation. This economic recovery ordinance extends the allowance for businesses to operate outdoors for another 22 months. So very significant additional extension of time. However, we are also needing to modify our roadways and incorporate an emergency access lane and get circulation and access to other streets that have been closed to allow outdoor businesses to expand into the roadway. Notices to the approximately 30 businesses that will be impacted out of the about approximately 200 businesses that have expanded outdoors. So we have a very small section of businesses that will be impacted by some of these roadway changes. We obviously are presenting this morning, meeting with a group of downtown property owners on Friday, and the Chamber of Commerce is hosting a business discussion next week that I'll be joining as well. So with that, Tess, could you kick off the presentation?
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Let's move to the next slide, please. And just for all of the Downtown Parking Committee members, it's really great to be with you here today. I'm Tess, I'm the State Street Master Planner, and I hope that we interact regularly. I'm sure I'll be back discussing what's been going on with the State Street Advisory Committee and the State Street Master Plan. But today I'm really going to focus on the Economic Recovery Extension and Transition Ordinance. So this slide just shows you kind of a summary of some of the provisions. Jason went over a couple of these already, but really starting out, this recovery ordinance, we're moving from an emergency ordinance to an economic recovery ordinance, and it authorizes a continued closure of State Street up until December of 2023. So additional time where businesses can expand outdoors and be outside. It also continues to address some public health, safety, and welfare concerns, really around circulation and public access and emergency access. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the specifics of the ordinance, I'll start out by talking about the fire lane. So some of the key differences from the emergency ordinance to the economic recovery ordinance that we're proposing. One of the main differences is that we are looking to transition from what exists today, a 14.5 fire lane, to a standard 20-foot fire lane and a 13-foot 6-inch vertical clearance. That's really a regular requirement. It's a state law, and then it's also in our city municipal code. And then there's another component to the ordinance that would require that outdoor business facilities on the promenade itself are considered portable. So anything that's new that existed after January 25th would need to become portable immediately. And anything that exists, there's a time frame within the ordinance set a few different options for council to consider, either June 2022, November 2022, or June 2023. The ordinance also has a reopening of partially closed streets. So that is the 1300 block of State Street, West Victoria, and then a couple areas in the funk zone. It's affecting Blue Water Grill and Llama Dog that have expanded beyond a parklet setting fully into the street. And then it has a component that prohibits outdoor cooking, and the signage allowance that was included in the emergency ordinance is no longer in the economic recovery ordinance. So we're moving back to our regular sign requirements for the promenade. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so I already talked about some of these. Again, it's the allowing kind of reopening the roadway closures on West Victoria, the 1300 block, and then the two other areas in the funk zone. It does require that those roadways be fully reopened by March 8th of 2022. The March 8th deadline is also required for the fire lane. And then outdoor business facilities that exist on those streets still can have outdoor dining. They would just need to transition to parklets. And we've already seen some of the existing businesses that are on those streets are in a parklet configuration. It affects about 5 businesses. Let's go to the next slide. So this is just going into a little bit more detail on the fire lane, and I'll just highlight that about 25 businesses are going to likely be impacted and need to shift back a little bit to comply with the fire lane requirement of 20 feet. Let's go to the next slide. This shows you a typical roadway area on State Street and what the fire lane looks like. So you'll see in general, you've got about 9 feet from the curb to the street, and then 6 feet where there's a turn lane. And so a business could look at their area, and approximately 9 feet from the curb to the end of their business area is where that fire lane, where they would be allowed to expand, and then the fire lane would go beyond that. Let's go to the next slide. So this just shows you an example of the fire lane, or of the fire truck out. I found this to be really helpful to see the truck on State Street. And while you can see on the right-hand picture that the truck does still go through, it's really tight in many areas. It's really hard for the fire truck to actually maneuver and turn. You'll see on the left-hand side that the legs are out on the fire lane. They also have a lot of equipment that they pull out on their trucks. And in order to access, the various equipment and move around the fire truck, they really need more than the width of the fire truck itself. That's why 20 feet is required by the state. Let's go to the next slide. This just shows you, again, some more photos of a fire truck down State Street. One of the other components of the ordinance requires that access be completely cleared from 735 State, 820 State, and 1314 State Street. That is the Balboa building, the Granada building, and then the other building that Logic Monitor has the bottom of right now. Those are the tallest buildings on State Street, and those are the ones that really require the ladder access to get up to reach the top of the buildings if there was an emergency. Let's go to the next slide. And so there are some additional promenade issues that I'll discuss just for kind of why portability was considered by staff. Really the uses on the roadway have changed, as you all know. By having outdoor dining, we're looking at trying to include some enhanced cleaning. Wanting to make portability would allow more cleaning, regular cleaning of the street, including underneath those platform areas or underneath an outdoor dining area. Just in conversation with staff, I thought it was a really good kind of thinking if you're thinking about the floor of a restaurant or business and considering that it hasn't been mopped or cleaned in the last 2 years. You wouldn't want to sit in a restaurant when it's not being cleaned, when the floor is not being cleaned. And so that's what we're really trying to get at. And then just the user experience has changed. So we're seeing more pedestrian travel, more bicycle travel downtown. And there's a real difference from driving in your vehicle to being on the road itself. The portability could also provide some more opportunities to bring back some things like parades or to have other types of events and new special events downtown. And it also provides enhanced ability for us to ensure that accessibility is really at the forefront of our minds and that stormwater is considered. Let's go to the next slide. So this just gives you some examples of what is happening out on State Street right now, all the different things that that downtown parking is really doing, power washing the sidewalks and the leaf blowing and doing landscaping and watering and really getting out there to try to make the space clean. And we want to be able to do more of that. Next slide. This just shows you, some examples of recent storm flows, and we've had recent rains and luckily didn't have major issues downtown. But as you know, when we do have heavy rainfall, it can create a lot of issues for storm flow because State Street is the storm drain. There is no separate storm drain on State Street, and so the water flows down. We want to make sure that we keep areas open for storm flow. Next slide. So just to kind of sum up the portability. So really it's, we're looking at transitioning to portable equipment and furnishings. And that's one of the items that we'll bring to council and something that we'll see if that's of interest or not. But staff feels like it would allow us to really do enhanced street cleaning and maintenance, to accommodate accessibility better, to provide parades and special events on the street if desired at some point, and would just provide the ability for storm flows to exist better on State Street. But there is a question on the transition and the timing that portability might be required. And so we've included a few different options in the draft ordinance. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that. So the fire lane is really a non-negotiable item. The fire department has indicated initially, I don't think anybody expected that this would last this long. And so the thinking of it being the 14.5 feet, I think was a consideration given, assuming that we'd only be in the situation for a few months. And that's certainly not the case. So we're looking at implementing the fire lane pretty immediately upon the effective date of the ordinance. But the portability component is a little bit different. So there's a few different timelines included in the ordinance. Again, June 1st, 2022, later in 2022, or mid 2023. Next slide. And so if you are interested in looking in more detail on what we're proposing, it is already posted online. It's on the State Street Advisory Committee website. It's under the January 10th staff report. The staff report's a bit lengthy because the RFP is attachment A of the document, but if you scroll down into attachment B, that's the draft ordinance. So just encourage you to take a look. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to myself or to Jason, and we'd be happy to answer any. And with that, I'll take questions.
Well, thank you, Ms. Harris. Appreciate it very much. And Mr. Harris, I think that I'm assuming that causes you some issues sometimes. Having to ask if you are.
Yeah, we're not related.
But I understand that. But it gets confusing sometimes, right?
It does. It does.
As long as a Harris is speaking, it's okay.
It's the Harris duo. What can I say?
Very good.
Not a bad name.
We thank you very much for that presentation. I want to say a couple things and then open up to the committee as well. And this is probably an opportunity for me to report that I did also see this presentation on Monday. I've been attending the State Street Advisory Committee meetings as a liaison for the downtown parking, and did hear this presentation before. And so thank you for all the work you're putting in this week upcoming to the council meeting on this very important ordinance. I also do want to say I am in strong support and of the need for the fire lane increase. It's really important that if, State Street is a main thoroughfare for our emergency access vehicles, and getting that proper width for those pieces of equipment to get up and down are critical. So I don't think there's much choice, but I do want to just say how much I support the need and the reason that the fire and police are asking for this revision. So we're in full support of that. And I'm just going to ask a question on the cleaning. Obviously, that's an issue we're dealing with much. You showed a picture there of some leaf blowing, and obviously, I'm assuming when we're leaf blowing or cleaning, this is maybe to Mrs. Clark as well. It's difficult to take care of the leaves just on the street, but we've all these other parklets. I mean, are we leaf blowing the spaces that belong to the businesses? I don't know that we're pressure washing their spaces because they're probably not made of a material that is easily pressure washed, but just kind of the issues between the two areas.
Sure, Chair Pinner, so I can speak to the cleaning. We do not clean the actual business areas, so we do not clean the parklets themselves or the enclosures themselves. It is the responsibility of the business owner to keep those clean. We do ask that they not sweep things out into the street. Of course, whether or not that actually happens is sort of another matter. We do clean around them. We do not pressure wash the street itself. We do have to go in, and we're going to get into this a lot more actually in a later item where we talk about the maintenance specs for the coming year.
Okay.
But we do hand sweep. You can see one of our staff there with the blower in the street. We do hand sweep around those areas.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Newkirk, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Pinner. I would echo Chair Pinner's comments about the fire access that, we got to get, it's kind of unfortunate. There may be some winners and losers. I know that's been comments about some of the efforts that have been done on State Street. But I think we have an obligation. Local government, public safety is like the #1 charge of local government. So I think should be at the forefront and is important. So I support that, certainly. And I also support the transition to portability. I think like long-term, when we have a plaza that's non-motorized, when you see thriving plazas, there often is a lot of outdoor dining, et cetera, but it's all portable. And if you go to those plazas late at night, they're wide open. And then during the day, they're full of tables and chairs, et cetera. So that's a pretty common way to do things. I did have a couple of questions for Tess about this ordinance. So you mentioned the signage and that the rules on signage would change. How will that get enforced? Because I've seen a fair amount of parklets using the kind of the exterior of their parklets for signage. Would those be deemed non-conforming, or would there be enforcement upon those immediately after effectiveness of the ordinance?
Sure, I can take that. So really what we're looking at kind of going back to our original sign requirements, really because we're seeing a lot of signs still on the sidewalk and in areas that are where accessibility is an issue. And there are signs, as you noted, that sometimes are up on parklets. And we're trying to get away from that for now. It would be a regular code compliance call. So if somebody sees something, and we get a complaint, then code compliance would go out and review and have that conversation with a property owner. We're just, at the moment, we've gotten a lot of complaints, and it's much harder to act on those at this time. And we're, because they're all over, there's not a whole lot we can do. And we're finding that it's causing some issues with accessibility. Doesn't mean that, I just want to make a note, it doesn't mean that long-term, the master plan won't include signage on the promenade. I think that that's probably a given, that it will include it in some way. And there will be, some kind of allowance for various businesses to have signage in some capacity, whether that be a kiosk with a, directional area or something else, I'm not sure. But that's something we're looking into. But for the moment, the thought is to kind of pull back a little bit on signage and really think that through a little bit further.
And then I had a couple of questions about the portability and implementation. So if a parklet needs to move back to provide the 20-foot fire access, I think I saw 25 businesses may be impacted. At that point, they may have to rip up their existing parklet. Would then they have to go to portability immediately? Because now they would be essentially putting in a new parklet. And then a second portability question is, with the existing parklets, one of the benefits for ADA access is the parklet gets raised so that the access is level with the sidewalk. But if those types of developments aren't going to be allowed in the future, and those that are existing may have to get removed within a certain time frame, are there any concerns about ADA access to street dining from the sidewalk, because we'll lose that parklet access?
Sure, I'll take those questions. So the first one on the timing of portability. So if it's an existing business right now, they would need to comply with the fire lane by March 8th. So it could mean they need to reconfigure the whole thing. It could mean they're shaving off a couple inches or a couple feet. They would not necessarily need to transition to portability at that time. It could be later in the year or the following year. However, part of the reason why we're including the portability component in this ordinance now is to signal to businesses that this is what staff is really looking at moving forward. And so if you're going to make a change to your business, you might want to consider thinking about portability sooner than later, rather than investing into more infrastructure that you're just going to have to pull out in a few months or, 8 months to a year. So that's the first item. The second item on portability, I'll just kind of go back. We've kept the definition fairly loose in the ordinance. So portability at this point is really needs to be able to be moved without heavy equipment. So, or, with hand tools or people within a short amount of time, within about 24 hours. And so we'll see what that ultimately brings us. There is a subcommittee that was formed by council on Tuesday. And the thinking is that they would kind of look through some of these components depending on what happens on the January 25th meeting. But then going into the accessibility piece, there likely we'll need to look at ADA ramps going from the sidewalk to the street. Similar though to, there's a lot of parklets that are fairly close to a crosswalk intersection. And so looking at ways to use that area to then maneuver into a parklet would be another consideration to get onto the street. But our feeling is that it's just, in general, would be easier to access if it's, really all pretty much level or all on the street in a portable configuration. Same with, you see somebody in a wheelchair and it's a lot more challenging to maneuver a parklet that is a structure than it is to maneuver a parklet that is more portable. You're able to move things a lot more easily to be able to get in and out than you are in a structure situation.
Thank you. Any other comments before I go to public comment? Okay. Ms. Clark, can you open up public comment for this item, please? Or I'll open it up if you'll make the announcement, please.
Sure thing. So if there's anybody present who would like to make a comment, please use the raise your hand button.
Sarah, this is Barbara, and I don't see how to raise my hand on the screen that I have now. And I saw that I'd been muted too. So I actually did have a comment I wanted to make, if I can do it at this time.
If you could hold 1 second, Barbara, I'll come to you after public comment.
Right.
We do not have any hands raised for public comment.
All right, thank you.
Oh, wait, hang on. We just got one hand up. Okay,
right,
so Accessible Santa Barbara, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good morning, everybody. This is Will Railing for Accessible Santa Barbara, and thank you for considering accessibility in the discussion of the extension of the Outdoor Business Authority. I just want to mention that there continues to be a great deal of non-compliance throughout the city in the outdoor business areas. I appreciate that downtown parking staff has made some effort to try to start tracking where these facilities are and to what degree they have accessibility issues. But it's just, I just want to remind everybody that these are expansions of existing public accommodations that serve the public. Many of them have involved construction. And therefore, each and every one of these locations needs to provide full accessibility in accordance with the American with Disabilities Act, but also with the California Building Code, which varies somewhat in its requirements. In some ways, they're better. And I appreciate the comment that was just made about the concern about raised parklets up to the curb. And yes, it is true that all of those need to be essentially perfectly flush to be accessible. Anything over a 1/4 inch lip is essentially something that requires a ramping of some form, or it can be a 1/2 inch in some circumstances. But accessibility is more than just that for these each and every specific requirement for accessibility, which of course everybody struggles with, and that's why the Certified Access Specialist program of the state, provides some experts that are very helpful, and the city has actually hired a consultant with a CASP certification to help it. Each and every technical requirement serves a purpose for accessibility, and even if it's not immediately apparent. So it's not just access into the area, which can be with a ramp if the ramp complies, but then having the availability of an accessible table, a seating location that meets the accessibility requirements is obviously very important, and those are very technical. And there's a maneuverability requirement of the area required to get to that table and back, turn, come back out again. So it's not easy. We acknowledge that. And we do think if this authority is going to be extended for almost 2 more years, that the city really needs to ramp up its efforts to enforce the accessibility on these, because of Mr. Harris mentioned there's around 150 that have been now authorized or constructed, and there's probably at least half of them have violations. And so, which raises the, the city has wanted to do this program to help the businesses, and that's laudable. But doing it for free is something that the city might want to reconsider, because the city is now having to expend sort of revenues and money on enforcement, and without any reimbursement at all. So we would like to see some form of basic public works permit required just to track these, so the city can know who is the entity that owns the parklet, so the city can get a proper indemnity agreement signed, rather than just claiming that they have indemnity, which is what the new ordinance does. And I appreciate your considering these concerns, and good luck with this process. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Ms. Clark, are there any other members of the public wishing to speak?
We do not have any other hands raised now.
Okay, with that, I'll close public comment. I'll come back to you, Ms. Silver. I just want to let you know your camera is not on you. So if you want to adjust that, you're able to speak now if you have another comment.
I can't see that the camera is not on me, but I certainly have been having problems with this Zoom session that I haven't had with other Zoom sessions. So my comment following public comments is enforcement seems to be a real issue with the accessible spaces, and there's no clear pattern of who enforces and how. What we know is things are not being enforced. So it's wonderful to mention the word, but I would like to see more about the process for enforcement and where things break down. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And I'll follow up with you after this meeting on the Zoom issues. So sorry about that. Okay, I just have one additional comment to make. I did want to follow up on our public speaker's comment. On Monday at the State Street Advisory Committee, I did speak during public comment, and I raised a similar issue about the possibility of cost, or the areas that are being used by the restaurants in the public areas. Should there be a consideration for cost or a fee associated with that area? As you can, and I brought up the topic that downtown parking and the plaza has increased their operations for cleaning and whatnot. We're now cleaning basically the sidewalk all the way across from building to building, including the street now has become the sidewalk. So I do want to follow up on that, and just let the committee know I did raise that, and let that kind of idea go forward. Or it's not, I don't know that it's in the ordinance. I guess really my question would be, does the ordinance allow for the council to impose a fee?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there there is an allowance for the city administrator to make additional changes. And then I would anticipate that with the subcommittee that was formed, that might be something that they would consider as well and bring back. We certainly could amend the ordinance at a future date to include cost. That it's been a consideration and a thought by staff. And I think ultimately that is, I know that is, what we'd like to be considering. And so really it's just figuring out what that number is going to be and how we're going to implement a program like that, and what staff will be doing that. So we're trying to work on that, but I would anticipate that something would come forward soon.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. I see Mr. Newkirk has his hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry, Chair, one question. Just thinking about indemnification. What's the city's liability in the right of way for these outdoor dining spaces? How are we protected if there's a cause of action or an injury in one of these private entities operating in their right of way?
Fair question. I will do my best to answer, but I am not one of the city attorneys, and I wish one of them was here to answer it better.
Well, fortunately, Ms. Harris, we don't typically have the city attorney in our meetings.
There you go.
It's not that complicated, but I'm sure you'll do fine.
So it is the public right of way, right? So the city owns, that whole area of State Street, but there is a clause in the ordinance and has been previously that basically if you're going to extend into the street, you're indemnifying the city for any injury or otherwise that happens in your private business area on the street. It's still a concern, I think, that the city has had. There's been a concern from a liability perspective for the fire lane. So that's, another reason to make sure that we extend that to 20 feet. But in general, that indemnity clause would not make the city liable if something happened in an outdoor business area.
Thank you. Well, in deference to time, we have a couple more items to get to, but I do want to make sure that we fully have asked all the questions. Are there any other questions from the committee members? Okay. Well, we thank you, Ms. Harris, for your presentation and all the work you're doing with the State Street Advisory Committee. You have a lot of work on your hands, I know. And I know that, as you mentioned, we will, I think, have an opportunity coming up here in the next couple months to integrate a little bit with the State Street Advisory Committee, give them some information about what we do and how we operate. And I know that's on your agenda in the next couple months with the State Street Advisory Committee. So we look forward to helping you out and helping that committee out in any way we can. So
Great. Thanks so much for having me this morning.
All right. All right. Let's bounce back real quickly to item 8, which is a report from the Finance Subcommittee. And since I'm the only member from that subcommittee that is here on the call, that puts me in the role of giving a quick update on that. That was Mr. Forrest's last meeting that we had on, I believe it was Tuesday, with the Finance Subcommittee. And so, as you know, we're in the budget cycle process, and staff is going to be having to prepare a budget coming up soon. We've had 2 finance committees. This was our third meeting. And a great deal of the focus has been on the deficit that we have incurred as a result of the pandemic and the significant drop in revenues as a result of the lack of activity in downtown. As a result of that, staff has been bringing forth discussion and ideas of how we are going to deal with this deficit moving forward. And as Mr. Forward would refer to them, he calls them levers. What levers can we move and change to get things going in a better direction? And one of those areas, one is cost savings, certainly looking at way to save money. And the other is, how are we charging for our parking? And so we have been looking at the big concept that has been not talked about for years, which is rates. We have not increased our rates for over 15 years. And so we are looking at those items as far as is one of the levers the free time, or is it the rate? And it's a very significant item. And so we've been looking at what other cities similar to ours are charging for their rates to see how we are in parity. But the reality is we're going to have to do something to right the ship, as they would say. If we are operating as a enterprise zone, we need to understand that we need to figure out how to make ends meet. So there will be this is not intended to give you all the details and information on that. That will be coming forth in our next DPC meeting with more details on ideas. So I know we'll have lots of thoughts and input on that, and it will require a lot of community involvement on this discussion. But it is something we really definitely need to do. Mr. Libery.
Are you intimating that the discussion will move back to the full board, or that you're talking about an update at the next board meeting and then the discussion going back to finance?
No, sorry, Mr. Labrie. No, the full board will be receiving a presentation. The discussion will be before the full board. I think the subcommittee was just to help staff kind of work through kind of questions and concerns that we would anticipate the full committee having. So we've sort of just been helping get through and maybe fine tune some issues, but no, definitely the full board would be involved with that. Ms. Clark, you can have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of confirm. So for our agenda next month, at this point, we are planning to devote pretty much the whole thing to our budget. At that point, we will have made our initial submittal. We want to bring our initial budget proposal to this committee, which is of course going to include our fee schedule and all those other components like Mr. Pinner was talking about. So if we are, proposing savings, to pull on any of those different levers, then we would have that discussion with in the context of our budget submittal.
And that's a good opportunity to inform the committee now, since we are by Zoom and we're not restricted to the loss of the Gephardt meeting room. We anticipate that meeting to be longer than standard. So we should let you all know to prepare for some extra time on that item. Does that help you out, Mr. Labrie, on that topic? Okay. All right, well, that's the report out. Ms. Clark, do I need to take public comment on that?
You do.
Okay, well then let's open up public comment.
So if any member of the public wishes to speak, go ahead, use the raise your hand button. And just so the public knows, you can use that raise your hand button at any point and it will remain up until we call on you. So you don't have to wait until I ask you to do it, but we do not have any hands raised.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the report from the Finance Subcommittee. And we'll move on to item 10. And just to let the committee know, we are getting close to our normal time, but we might run over a few minutes if that's amenable to the committee here. If you have to jump off, do let us know. And if you do have to jump off, we will have to end the meeting because that will limit our quorum. Okay. All right, item number 10.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pinner. So if we can go to the next slide. So I'm going to try to keep this quick so that we can try to get out here not too late. But we did want to review with you, as we alluded to before, the maintenance services that we're looking at possibly procuring for the coming year. So if you'll recall, when downtown parking took over responsibility for maintaining and overseeing the contracts for maintenance of the State Street Plaza, those bids went out actually before COVID. So before the Promenade was a twinkle in anybody's eye, we retained those services. And so obviously they don't consider the current situation that we have on State Street and the need for additional maintenance over and above what we initially requested. So for the coming year, we're in the process, we're preparing to go out to bid for those services again. So I wanted to walk the committee through sort of what we get now and what we're hoping to get going forward, subject to the availability of funding. So to start out, the two main contracts that we're going to be looking at are for janitorial services and power washing. We also obviously do the flag rotation, but that's not going to change. And we do landscaping services as well. But again, that's not something that we really think needs to be enhanced at this point for the promenade. So we're just going to be focusing on janitorial services and pressure washing, because those are the two things that are really sort of impacting the day-to-day cleanliness of the street. So the way that we're hoping to structure this is to sort of offer kind of 3 tiers of services and sort of see what kind of pricing we can get on those. So the first tier would be the status quo. That's what we're already doing today. And so for janitorial services, right now, the locations of those services are limited to our parking lots and garages, as well as the paseos that surround them and sort of the exterior area around those garages. As well as the State Street sidewalks only from Cabrillo Boulevard up to Victoria. So our current janitorial services do not cover the promenade itself and the street surface. That's currently being done by our own maintenance staff in-house. So for moving up to tier 2, which would be kind of, we're going to think of this as sort of like the bronze, silver, gold level tiers. So that would be sort of the mid-tier. We'd be looking to add on the actual street itself for State Street, the promenade, as well as the overcrossing. So that area, the stairwells that go up from, just south of Gutierrez up for the 101 overcrossing and the stairways to and from that area. And then for our top tier, we're going to consider expanding those services out onto the 0-100 blocks. So when you're looking at how this is structured, tier 1 is the base, tier 2 then adds on additional things, and then tier 3 is everything below it plus some additional. So we'd be looking at actually taking that out to the sidewalks on the 0-100 blocks as well, so that we're having improved cleanliness as people are getting from the lots and are actually getting to the State Street promenade. So the services that we currently have in the State Street Plaza are daily trash pickup, which includes leaves, dirt, litter, human waste, removing palm fronds when we have wind events, removing graffiti. Again, this is just limited to the sidewalks, and wiping down the light poles and the lenses. So again, all those things happen daily or as needed in terms of the palm fronds and the graffiti. So when we bump up to tier 2 and we're looking to enhance that, we want to add, again, moving down into the promenade on the streets, cleaning around and between the furnishings that are on State Street, with the bike share docks, the parklets, the other dining fixtures that are out there now. We have the commercial sweeper that still goes down the street, but of course it can't get into those little nooks and crannies. It can't get in and around everything where a lot of this litter tends to collect. So we'd be adding that on. We'd be adding on the removal of trash and cleaning of stairways. Disinfecting is needed. So those stairways, again, up to that overcrossing, and then removing bulky items such as discarded shopping carts. And then we bump up to tier 3. Again, we're expanding the area that we'd be doing, but we'd also be adding daily disinfection and cleaning of trash cans, cleaning the decorative water fountains a few times a week, removing leaves and debris. Again, that's something that's currently done by our own maintenance staff, but we want to be able to expand that for our contractors, cleaning and disinfecting the State Street benches, as well as the sidewalk areas around and underneath those benches, because we know that those can tend to accumulate, waste can kind of accumulate around there. And then for our public restrooms, currently those are cleaned and disinfected 3 times a day. For tiers 2 and 3, we want to add an additional cleaning because we're finding that we're getting calls in between our currently scheduled cleanings fairly frequently for additional cleanings in those restrooms. So we'd want to bump that up. So if you can move to the next slide. And then these contracts don't just cover the plaza, they cover our lots as well. And we get kind of a better deal by sort of bundling those together. We get a lower overall rate. So that is how we get some cost savings there. So for our garage interiors, right now we have the contractors emptying the trash cans daily Everything else is just as needed or on call. So that includes cleaning and disinfecting handrails and door handles, cleaning and disinfecting areas where there's human waste, cleaning liquid spills and oil spots, picking up litter and sweeping. So our maintenance staff does some of that, and then we have contractors on call for that, the remainder of that. So for moving up to tier 2, we want to make these daily things. So removing, in addition to removing debris and trash in stairwells, landings, and walkways, mopping and cleaning stairwells, landings, and walkways, disinfecting and removing graffiti. So basically going from an as-needed situation to making these standard everyday things. And then for tier 3, we're actually thinking about increasing that frequency to twice a day, because what we're finding right now, it tends to happen in the mornings. So things get dirty throughout the day, and then you get the night crowd coming in, people going out to dinner, going to shows, things like that, and things have gotten dirty again. So thinking about adding a second cleaning so that we can kind of refresh those walkways and stairways for the evening. And then the exterior of our lots, so the areas that are just around the lots. Right now, we've got daily litter pickup, emptying trash cans, and sweeping. So for tier 2, we just be adding on to that, removing bulky items and shopping carts, mopping and cleaning those stairways. And when we say stairways, we're referring to the stairs that are on the exterior of the building that go into the building. Sometimes they're very small areas, sometimes they're bigger, like at the Granada garage or lot 10. And when we're talking about stairwells, we're talking about the internal stairwells. And then in the elevators, right now, once a week, we have cleaning and polishing the elevators, disinfecting buttons and handrails. We want to move that to daily. So that'd be the changes that we're looking at for the janitorial services. If we want to move on to the next slide, we can talk about pressure washing. So right now, our pressure washing contractor works on the State Street sidewalks from Cabrillo Boulevard up to Victoria Street. And so those happen on different schedules. Right now, once a month, every block, the sidewalks get cleaned from Gutierrez to Victoria Street, as well as the sidewalks and stairwells on the Highway 101 underpass. So that's happening once a month. They rotate through on kind of a 3-week schedule. So they're out there, every week working on different blocks, and then, they start back again. And then quarterly, we have the sidewalks from Cabrillo Boulevard to the Highway 101 underpass, so the other side of the freeway. So for tier 2, again, we want to add the promenade itself into that, to add, make that pressure washing on the sidewalks weekly. So move everything up so that everything's being done once a week as opposed to once a month. One of the biggest complaints that we have is smells and odors that come from the sidewalk and sidewalk areas. And that's really where pressure washing can help, because they'll use a disinfectant. They use like enzyme products that help eliminate those odors. And so that's something that could really help address that. And then quarterly, again, as we talked about a bit before, we'd want to be adding in pressure washing for the State Street Promenade. So, and that would be contingent on being able to move to a portable setup for the items that are on State Street and the business facilities on State Street. But something that portability could really facilitate is better cleaning. So, rather than just kind of cleaning around and hoping that things don't accumulate, and, as Ms. Harris said, basically having kind of the floors of these things, be not really ever be thoroughly mopped or pressure washed. Moving to a program where once a quarter we ask that items be removed, for an evening while we actually do pressure washing on the street and of those areas to get them cleaner. And then for tier 3, again, we're talking about adding on the 0 100 blocks. And so creating cleaner pathways to State Street and to the State Street Promenade. And again, adding that as a weekly service. So that just wraps up. I wanted to give you guys a quick overview and let you comment and sort of get feedback on what the cleanliness needs might be and how we might want to think about achieving that.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. I can see you're taking your role as the new Plaza manager very seriously here. We appreciate it.
I can throw in some jokes next time.
Yeah, very good. Very nice. Well, my only comment is, we'd all love to be in tier 3. We want the streets and the walkways and the trash cans and restrooms to be as clean as possible. There's no doubt about that, but certainly we're looking at this without knowing yet what the proposed costs are. So, I'll just comment that I want it as clean as possible, but we need to understand the economics of it. So, and that maybe goes a little bit to my previous comment that we're asked to do, the city is being asked to do a lot more work with this kind of new promenade setup. So, but that's my only comment is, yes, we want it clean, but I need to know more about the costs. Are there any other members of the committee wishing to comment on this at this point? This will basically be coming back to us, Ms. Clark, with after. Go ahead.
We'll have the contracts themselves, I believe, don't come back, but obviously for the budget, we'll be talking about the funding for that.
Okay. Mr. Labrie.
Yeah, I'll just quickly echo your comments, but then add anecdotally that I have heard on the street, if you will, a desire, a greater desire, more comments about stepping up cleanliness. So I think this is the right thing to be considering, and I'm glad you are. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Labrie. Yeah, I don't think anyone on this committee don't feel that we want the street to be as clean as possible, and we need to figure out how to do that. Okay, I will open up at this time public comment. Ms. Clark, if you can make the announcement, please.
And we do not have any hands raised right now for public comment.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll close public comment, on item number 10. All right, thank you, Ms. Clark. Is your item number 11 a brief update on parking lot automation?
Yes, item number 11 will be brief.
Okay.
If we're moving on
Let's
to that
go for
item, then I'm going to bring on Roy Forney, our parking supervisor, who's going to give you an update on the status of our efforts to automate our lot operations and some pilot, some sort of trial periods that we're beginning to move forward with.
Great, thank you. And everyone on the committee is okay on time? Yes. All right, thank you.
Good morning, Chair Pinner, committee members. I'll most definitely make this brief. As you know, I'm Roy Forney, the parking supervisor, just here to update you on the parking automation efforts. I would like to start just letting everyone know that we have begun testing automation, and we started it at city lot number 8, which is located at 1015 Anacapa Street. It's that small parking lot that's right behind the Chase Bar and Grill. It's a great location for us to test the automation. We started testing it by fully automating it for the past 3 Sundays. And the weekends, again, it's just a great time to do it because of the minimal traffic that is there. We saw a lot of good things with the automation. Customers were, I would say 90% of them were just driving out. LPR was working great, gates going up, they're processing their fees. And then we had a couple of customers that needed assistance. And that is why we are postponing the testing there, because we did end up finding out that our intercom system, which links us or is our communication tool to speak to customers at the column, wasn't working properly. So we were able to hear them. They were unfortunately not able to hear us. So we are postponing efforts. We currently have a ticket out to our ski data vendor to get that fixed, and then we will start that back up. And again, we saw a lot of good things with automating that lot fully for the day on Sundays. We were also had plans on testing automation here at the Granada parking garage. The idea was this Monday, the 17th, we were going to start automating from 7:30 in the morning till 11 a.m. And that's that morning time where, again, the lot's very slow, but we're not there just because we don't have the staffing to take care of it. So we were going to start that up. And then sure enough, over the weekend, our Anacapa entrance cameras for LPR went down. So we have another ticket out to our ski data vendor to make sure that gets taken care of. Our plan, at least at this point, is to start that testing up February 7th. And again, that would be a Monday through Sunday testing timeframe to when in the morning we're fully automating, signs will be up. We'll have a staff member here in the office to assist with any customers that may have issues coming out. The idea for that morning time would just be for us to evaluate what we're missing in terms of revenue, what we're not getting in the morning. And also just, I think, really help us understand of what a hybrid model may look like, and something we could move forward to doing across the entire our parking facilities. So that's pretty much all I have in terms of update for our parking automation. Again, it seems to be a slow start. We're really just trying to get our equipment to be working properly so we can kind of move forward with this. But most definitely love to answer any questions that anyone has.
Well, thank you, Mr. Forney, and we appreciate the I'll use the word caution that you are using as we test here to make sure we find out these little issues in small amounts as opposed to learning them in big amounts. So that sounds like you guys are doing a great job on that. And I guess my only question would be is, and I think you said this, when things were going smoothly, it seems to be going well, those moments that you had on the Sunday lot at Lot 8. So you felt positive with the operation in general.
Very positive. And again, I feel like it's really unfortunate that the intercom button went down because things were going well up into that point. And so we did have an issue with just not really being able to provide that information that we needed to a couple of customers. We ended up just raising the gate and letting them out. And then of course, stopping that testing period for that. But again, promising things for sure.
Great, thank you. Any members of the committee have any comments or questions? Okay, let's go ahead and open up public comment, Ms. Clark.
Okay, and I'm not seeing any hands raised on this issue.
Okay, well, thank you, and we'll close public comment. Well, we don't mean to, because of the brevity of your report, Mr. Forney, we don't believe it's any less important than anything else we discussed today. We are very, very keenly focused on the LPR system, and we look forward to it. So obviously the next meeting will be fully oriented to budget, but hopefully by the next meeting, that item will be farther up on the agenda, and we can hear more about the good things that are going on. It sounds like from your testing, you're going to learn that there might be things that we need to have on hand, like something goes down. I mean, how quickly can we get a camera changed? Does it mean having a spare camera here locally, or, you know, looking at those processes for when something goes wrong? Or is there certain signage that we need to have ready to put out when, because once we get to a point that LPR is the hopeful like norm, when it doesn't work, people are going to go, well, why, you know, that's going to be the opposite issue now. So we need to be prepared to when something does not function properly, how are we informing the parking public for that short-term change? So I think you'll learn a lot of that from these testing processes. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Wish you best of luck on the next test. Okay, with that, I do appreciate the committee members staying a little longer than normal. And thank you again. And I hope your new year is starting off in a positive fashion. I think the parking committee is working very hard with lots of issues coming up before us. Obviously, the continued change of the plaza is a big item, and we're carrying extra items on our agenda to deal with. So I thank you for bearing with us. And we do look forward to our next meeting. As I say, we will let you know well in advance the length of that meeting, but I do expect it probably to go an extra, would you say an extra hour, Ms. Clark, is reasonable?
I would say to plan for that, yes.
Okay. So hopefully you guys can all be prepared for that. And thank you very much and have a great day. And again, thank you to all the staff that we had attending today, including our new mayor and our new liaison, Councilmember Jordan. Thank you very much and be well. We are adjourned.
So Trey, I'm still